Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to walk you through my quantum process, which is a process we use in our monthly quantum meetings. This is the third part that we follow in that meeting. The first and second part revolve around recognizing what what you're wanting clarity about, what you're wanting to shift in your life, where you're wanting to make change. So, this part of the process, the quantum process, comes into place once you already have an idea about what your vision is. So, this is a framework I use for manifestation, but not in the way manifestation's usually talked about. Most manifestation work stops at clarity, right? You're supposed to figure out what you want, visualize it, set the goal, and then somehow you're just supposed to go live your best life. Sometimes people include setting SMART goals around that, and that certainly helps with moving the needle on, in terms of getting what you want. But there are a few other things that kind of get in our way when we're trying to manifest and make change, and that's what this is supposed to address. Because let's be honest, if just choosing and deciding what you want something actually worked, we would all already have that. So what we're going to do instead is walk through the full process of what it actually takes to create long-term change. So what's missing for most manifestation programs is alignment, identifying any dissonance and stop negotiating with yourself. The third part is awareness, where any kind of maladaptive schemas might be running the show. Regulation, so when we start changing, discomfort shows up. So learning how to stay present with that. Agency is recognizing that you need to make choices that are in alignment with the person that you want to be. And then finally, embodiment. So you are the person you want to be before the thing actually shows up in your life. And that one can be a little bit confusing. So we'll go into that a bit more. So step one is vision. It's clarity of vision. This is where you decide what you actually want. Not what you think you want, not what looks good on paper, what you genuinely want your life to look like over the next few months. So this is your North Star. But here's the reality. Most of you already know what you want. That's not the problem. The problem in everything is everything that comes after this step. So if you look at the step 1 and 2 of what you did earlier, you're going to use your reflection prompt to work through. When you're thinking about your vision, I want you asking what's actually happening right now. So like, what is the reality of your situation right now? So if you look at what you want versus what's actually happening, this is where the gold is. What patterns am I stuck in? So, like, what's my actual behavior? What am I doing, avoiding? What's creating this alignment? What do you wish would be happening instead? And the last piece that's really important here is why? Like, why does this even matter to you? Because your why is often the thing that will help you move through discomfort, right? So when we start growing, things start feeling uncomfortable. And when you keep your why really current and present in your mind, when you open the refrigerator and there's a piece of chocolate cake in front of you, and you go to grab it, but you're thinking, no, actually, I'm trying to be healthier. Your why is what pops in at that moment and kind of helps you override your basic desire. So take a few minutes to work on that. You can pause the video here to do a little bit of journaling and then pop back on to move into the next slide. So all behaviors exist for a reason. This is partly what trips people up, January 1st arrives and we're like, no, these are all these things that I just don't want my life to look like anymore. And so I'm going to shift these things and change my life. But part of the problem is that you behave the way you behave for very specific reasons. They're patterns. So before you try to eliminate the behavior, it's really, really important to understand what they're doing for you. So every behavior is serving a function. It's either keeping you safe, connected, helps you manage how you feel, it's giving you something like relief or validation. They help protect your identity. They help you make sense of the world. They can assist with maintaining control, or they can, simply be habits, things that you're running on familiarity. So instead of asking yourself, why do I do this? And consequently beating yourself up, start by asking yourself, what is this actually doing for me? So you can pause the video here and take some time to reflect on this and journal, and then pop on again and we'll shift into step 2, which is alignment. So alignment, this is where people quietly fall apart. Um, so alignment is about identifying dissonance and stop negotiating with it. Cognitive dissonance is when two or more things are true at the same time. So, for example, a lot of times I hear, I want a relationship. But when we start digging into it a little bit deeper, you start to understand that the underlying belief system is that people aren't safe, that you don't trust them, right? So those two things can't live in the same place at the same time. You can't be deeply involved and intimate in a relationship and at the same time not trust that person, because then you're hedged. So that's when you end up with dysfunctional dynamics. Or say, for example, you want to grow your business, but you're afraid of being visible, right? So the fear of being visible is continually going to undermine your ability to get out there and be seen by people. So you can't move forward while holding both without addressing the conflict, right? So you want to ask yourself, what do I say I want versus what I'm actually doing? What's out of alignment? Where am I out of alignment? And do I have competing needs? Because most of the time you're not stuck. What's actually happening is you're divided. I want one thing, but I also want something else. I want to be connected, but I want to be protected. And I don't know how to do both of those things at once, right? So take a minute and pause the video here if you want to take some time to work through that and reflect, and then bring your answers in next when we move into step 3. So step 3 is about awareness. It's learning to notice the patterns, beliefs, and signals that are shaping your reality in real time. This is where we start kind of looking under the hood at what's actually running the show behind the curtain. And this is where maladaptive schemas come in. If you've worked with me before, I have you complete an assessment that kind of helps you recognize what are the lenses through which you see the world? How do you interpret things? So schemas are patterns in how you interpret the world. They're efficient, but they also can be really limiting, and especially if you're not aware of them. So if they're not explicit, they can be kind of running the show in that you don't really realize it. So you can have a conscious desire, I want a healthy relationship, but your unconscious belief is people aren't safe. And that belief will win every single time, right? So what you want to be focusing on is recognizing and making explicit what your underlying belief is, those unconscious drivers in the background, making them explicit so that you can start addressing them. So your reflection question for this action is, the question becomes, what belief makes this behavior make sense? Now, what do I want to believe? What must I believe for this pattern? Not what do I want to believe? What must I believe for this pattern to exist? So, for example, if I believe that my worth is earned, I don't have time ever, right? I'm so obsessed with productivity that I never take time to rest. It's never enough. I can never do enough, right? So I need to recognize that my belief that my worth is earned will be driving my behavior in all different kinds of places. And how does that show up? Well, I won't take breaks to eat. I won't take time to take care of myself, things like that. So take a few minutes, pause the video here, work through the reflection and make some journal notes, and then pop back on to move into step 4. So step 4 is about regulation. This is about building the nervous system capacity to stay present with your desire and the discomfort that can come up when trying to change. This is the step no one wants and the one everything depends on. Because the moment you try to change, your system is going to push back. And man, can you get blowback, especially if it's something that there's dissonance around or there's a maladaptive schema behind, right? If it's something as simple as a habit, those are relatively easy to change so long as they're not scaffolding your self-esteem or something like that. Um, but if this is about a maladaptive schema and a belief about the world, if you just kind of rush in to change things, you're going to experience some discomfort. So you want to understand that the discomfort isn't a sign you're doing anything wrong, which is what generally the women I work with interpret it as. Um, you need to start recognizing that it's a sign you're doing something different. So equanimity is, that's what we're working with here. And there's some confusion around this. People talk a lot about nervous system regulation and staying regulated, and people interpret that as just like always being calm or being super like bottled up. But that's not actually the case. Equanimity is the ability to move through a situation, process it, have the emotions show up, recognize them, take them at a moment, name them, and then carry on despite that discomfort. Um, so it's basically the ability to stay present when something uncomfortable shows up. So your reflection for this is asking yourself, when this gets uncomfortable, how am I going to stay? Because if you can't stay, you're going to default to your original behavior, right? The behavior's there for a reason. It's there for a really good reason. It either keeps you safe, etc. And so if you haven't actually made a plan into how you're going to navigate the discomfort and support yourself, you're going to more than likely default to that original behavior. So part of journaling through this is recognizing kind of like what the discomfort's going to be. And then when it shows up, what am I going to do? Am I going to call in someone from my sacred circle? And I'm going to rely on really healthy ways of self-soothing, etc., things like that. So you can pause the video here and take some time to work on that, and then pop back on, and we'll move on to step 5. So step 5 is about agency, reclaiming your sense of choice, authorship, and responsibility in what you want to create. This is where you start making real different choices, right? So up until now, we've been talking a lot about the stuff that's going on behind the curtain, kind of subconsciously, that undermines your ability to move forward. This is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. This is where you actually start making different choices in your life that are aligned with the thing that you're trying to manifest, right? So it's not because this is easy, it's because it's what you're wanting. Agency isn't control over outcome, it's your ability to choose your next step, even when things feel uncertain. So it's essentially about alignment. So agency is your capacity to influence your direction through conscious choice, especially under uncertainty. It's choosing your next step. It's regulating yourself when things wobble. It's staying aligned when there's friction, and it's adjusting without collapse, right? It's understanding that the power of every single moment rests inside of you, and it doesn't require that you wait for the people around you to shift their behavior, that you can change who you are in any moment. So, our reflection question here is, where am I giving away my power? And what's one small shift I can make that moves me back into alignment, right? So, how is it that I can recognize that I have the capacity to make change and that I don't need to wait around for people to help me get what I want? So, you can take a minute and journal about that and then pop back on as we move into step 6. So, step 6 is about embodiment. And embodiment is when your internal state and your external behavior match the future you desire. This is where everything comes together. Embodiment is when your internal state and your behavior match, right? So you're no longer waiting for that life. You're actively living in a way that makes that life inevitable. So this means your identity matches, your belief supports it, and your behavior reflects it. And finally, your nervous system can actually tolerate it. So, the really important thing to understand here is that this is about iteration and practice. A lot of this is about exposure, it's about choosing to behave in a way that's aligned, maintaining that behavior through the discomfort, and shifting into a way of being that reflects the reality that you want. So the final, pardon me, excuse me, your final reflection on this is, what does the version of me who already solved this do differently? And this can be kind of tricky, right? This might be a moment where you sit down with some really, really close friends and say, hey, can you help me work through this? You know, I talk about wanting to do this thing or have this thing in my life. So, for example, I keep talking about how I want to have a partner, how I want to be in a relationship, you know, do you notice anything that's getting in my way? And they may say, well, you know, you're not actually going out on any dates. Um, and so the version of you who has a partner is the person that's out there actively dating, that is in partnership incrementally, 1 minute at a time, one date at a time. And so then you say to yourself, how do I start living that now in small, consistent ways? It could be that you start behaving at home alone as though you're in a partnership, that you're creating space for that, both physically, mentally, emotionally, so that there is space for that person to be there. So take a few minutes and you can journal about that and see what comes up. So this is the full process. Not just knowing what you want, but becoming someone who can actually hold it. That's the difference between intention and actual change. So that's it, you guys. I hope this has been helpful. I'm really glad that this is up and live for you guys to jump into whenever you're feeling you want some support around it. and that you can actively work through the prompts on your own and bring them to quantum when we meet again. So, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this. Just a quick note that none of this is designed to diagnose anything, and that mostly you're just using it as reflection prompts to start conversations. Thanks so much and have a great day.